This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. After experiencing trauma, I went to therapy, and my therapist guided me through a difficult time in my life. They helped me understand what was happening and provided me with tools to cope and find my own strength and resilience. Their experience and compassion were invaluable and enabled me to rebuild my life and move forward. I strongly believe in the power of therapy to help people through difficult times. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/resilience. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/resilience or choose podcast, then notes on resilience during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
Why the World Health Organization in 2019 did a study that burnout is not a buzzword. It is an occupational phenomenon because of what you just brought up. I'm not going to go to my boss and tell my boss how I feel today.
Hello, and welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky. My guest today is Jasmin Dennis. She's a seasoned expert in creating and implementing transformative workplace wellness programs. Today, we talked about identifying emotional burnout, the role of compassion in leadership, and how to champion workplace health and wellness. You're going to really enjoy this conversation. Jasmin, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Very excited to be here.
Before we dive into the topic, what's one thing that you've done in any area of your life that you never thought you would do?
Oh gosh, I have to tell you that skydiving.
You did.
Moons ago, I was with a company and they had, a golfing club, a skydiving club. And I thought, how hard can that be? Because this guy who's going to be there with you, he's going to fear for his life. So he's got to be careful. And I tell you, I went through every single emotion a human being could go through.
I bet you did.
Yes. And I promise God that if you ever get me through this, I'll never do it again. never done it again.
Well, hey, you took a literal leap of faith. That is amazing.
Yes. What else could scare you? As to be out there in the open and there's it's not a soft landing if you miss.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. We are talking about compassionate leadership today. And before we hit record, you and I were talking about how important compassionate leadership is to identifying and preventing emotional burnout in the workplace. Tell me more about that.
Oh, first of all, you have to dissect what is compassion, right? It's empathy, it's learning to listen, is creating a safe space for someone. So a compassionate leader has to literally be conscientious about the work environment and how they are going to show up every single day. Because in order for burnout not to happen in the workplace, compassion has to be the cornerstone of that workplace and creating a culture where compassion thrives.
Yes. And I'm fully in agreement with everything you just said. Question though, if a company is dealing with a lot of burnout in their executives and their teams, what are some steps they can do to become more compassionate or to tune into their compassion to change that environment? Because it seems to me that companies kind of get stuck in these cycles. And what's a way to get out of that?
Well, the first thing I would tell a company right off the bat, they have to know to identify emotional burnout.
Okay.
If they can't identify that themselves or their team or their employee is in emotional burnout, it is not going to help. So that is why I always paint a visual picture of burnout pie.
The burnout pie. Tell us about that.
If I walked up to you and said, you said, Jasmine, I really like apple pie, I really like peach pie, and, I'd like you to bring one over to me, come by and bring me a pie.
Please do, by the way. Yes.
Yes, eat that pie in one sitting, you're going to be sick. Now, the pie comprised of a lot of stuff, long ingredients that's good for you, long ingredients that are not good for you. However, if you slice that pie, let's take it for the burnout pie, visual enough so the compassionate leader can see to say, I am going to rule and develop this culture of being a compassionate leader by looking at that burnout pie. And the slices, I've always said, not more than 8 slices. How you eat an elephant, little bites at a time, right?
Yes. Yes.
I say to someone, if you look and you see your staff, and this happened where a whole section of that company is in burnout based on their actions. So you see the pie slices, you'll have, for instance, lack of energy. You'll have no productivity, detachment in the workplace, ability in the workplace. You'll have just chronic stress in the workplace. I say to that leader, by being empathetic, by being conscious of how you're running your team, do a checkup from the neck up for everyone. Create a space where your employees are going to feel safe to come in and say, you know what, today I am not at my best.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sleep well last night. And so that's a key. If it's a compassionate leader, there's that first key to helping that individual. Most leaders will look past that. You didn't sleep last night. They're probably going to ask that person, oh, were you up watching TV or you're sick? No. You ask that individual to say, tell me, just when you say, tell me a story or use the word, tell me what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Tell me why you didn't sleep last night. Don't assume that you know why that person didn't sleep last night. And that person feels safe enough to say, I really don't know. Or maybe I miss my deadline at work. Or maybe when I go to work, I don't understand why I feel I'm not a part of that team. And so a compassionate leader will start to say, okay, I'm going to work on that slice of pie because that is what I can control.
Yes. Yes.
Can't control the whole pie. Not yet, anyway.
Right. I want to add to what you said. I talked to a lot of people about the concept of resiliency and compassion. And something I've heard from coaches and consultants and employees is how rare it is for a leader to actually ask and listen to the answer of what is really going on with you? What do you really need? How can I help?
Yes. And that is what you find a compassionate leader will slowly work through their team
Mm-hmm.
by helping them one slice at a time.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time when that leader is going to recognize that that person is out of the burnout pie.
Mm-hmm.
Their productivity is high. Their energy is high. People are not yawning every 2 minutes. They feel like they can, there's an open door policy that leader create a really nice space for them to go in and share. They are not driven by the demands of the job. And all of a sudden, they're wondering, and if they take stats of this from when they start working on that pie, they're going to realize that all of a sudden something has changed here. The numbers are up and as many sick days off.
Want to dig a little deeper into this. What if the leader themselves is struggling with burnout? In some workplaces, there's so much pressure and we've shrunken the workforce, so people are taking on more responsibility. What happens in that situation if the leader is burned out and maybe can't even identify what's going on with the team?
Excellent. This is why in creating a workplace health and wellness program, you find some companies will think you're only talking about the employees and not themselves. You have to lead by example. And so therefore, In creating this wellness program, I start with the leaders. I say, tell me how you feel. Before I start to create a program for your employees, I want you to tell me how you feel. I want to know if I need to deal with the leader before I attack, because this leader has to lead by example. And I'm going to have to give strategy. Of course, that applies to the burnout pie. I'd say, okay, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you have anxiety leading your team? Do you have constant pressure of your team not producing? And how does it affect you? How do you feel? So in getting to the leaders, and sometimes I do a program where the leaders, I start off with the leaders first, sometimes, and sometimes I want the leaders to be a part of it because I want the employees to understand that leaders are humans as well. They're human. They have frailties just like anyone else. They walk, they talk. And if you find a space where they're vulnerable enough to show that, yeah, I might have been irritable with you yesterday, and be smart enough to go and say, I apologize. I know why I was irritable with you yesterday. I promise to do better. And it starts off when a leader acknowledges within themselves that they're not superhumans and that they do have the same ache and pains that we do have. They do, they have that sense where they figure, okay, I'm not going to be judged by my staff or my higher ups. We're all here together. And that's when when I speak to leaders, they feel good when everyone is on the same page.
Yes. And what I'm hearing as you're saying this is building this underlying trust in each other as team members.
Yes. And you find that it works, really, like we all have our times when we feel, me included. And I have this visual that I walk around with me. And the reason I created the burnout pie is because I want that visual, because I want to stop and say, okay, Jasmine, why are you driving like a mad maniac on the street to get to this appointment? It's not worth it. What is there that is propelling you to be anxious ahead of time? Because remember, our actions today, if you come home and you say, my son is crying today and I don't want my son, kids will normally say, no, there's nothing wrong. However, tell me, make it in the story form. Tell me how you feel today. They will tell you that they had a rough day at school or a rough day at work.
Yes, I feel like when you say, tell me how you feel, there are some workplaces where that would be a hard sell. And we still have that division of work is this place, it's professional, and home is where you have your feelings, and never the twain shall meet.
That is so true. That is why the World Health Organization in 2019 did a study that burnout is not a buzzword. It is an occupational phenomenon where, because of what you just brought up, like, I'm not going to go to my boss and tell my boss how I feel today. Well, if that continues, the end result is not good. So it's all an education program, and when I go in, I either say, my Jazzy Health and Wellness can help you do that, or we can train someone. So it is consistent. There's got to be an era where you work it down. And I know there's some tough workplaces. I've often said health and wellness is not a sexy word. People think when you talk wellness is about weight loss, and it's about all those stuff. It's about the whole. On my website, there's the logo is a circle. And I did that because it's a circle of life, all go through the circle of life. And it's all in educating. Some companies do it very well. Some companies are open to do it. Some companies start the program and it falls by the wayside because another boss will come in and another leader will come in and think very different. And I'm telling you, I've seen leaders that are not compassionate at all. None of the words of compassion ever flow through that person's vein. So that person's going to have a toxic work environment. I heard on someone's podcast, and they gave an analogy of the rider and the elephant. I'm going to equate the employees as the rider and the leaders as the elephant. And it might seem that the employees can lead the leaders, but it's not so, because it's so ingrained in the workplace and in the communities, and even in the household. The husband might say, I'm the leader of this house. The community, they have different tiers of community. And in the workplace, they might say, well, I am your boss and this is what goes. Just have to, like the elephant, one company at a time, and try to educate them that in this phase that we're in of real burnout, stress, we need to have a different mindset. So it takes a different, I might not be qualified to change some of the minds of some of these leaders. But hopefully, if you drop a nugget and you give a hint, and if your department is constantly, lagging behind, we're hoping that it will change. We can only hope that it changes. Takes more than me to go in and change the minds.
Yes. Well, you mentioned something very interesting that I think about a lot, which is you can get a new leader come in who decides they're not going to necessarily do some of the old programs or what have you, or they're going to ignore them. And I think about how important it is to embed compassion into the culture and into the systems so that one person might have a different approach, but they can't upend the whole system. And if they are toxic, then they somehow get moved out of that role much more quickly. I want to see these things become just so much more embedded versus it depends on whether you have a good manager or not.
Absolutely. That is so, they have to have some form of a metric. If they want this compassionate leader in the company, it has to be a part of their blueprint. So that the leader that is coming in is going to say, oh, of course they're going to give their input for changes, right? But it's to have a series of an open door policy. It's not hard to have an open door policy, right? It's to prioritize employee well-being. How do you do that? You might say, okay, I'm going to have, this is the way it works when we encourage our employees to go out and do some laughing yoga, which I really, the mind does not know the difference whether it's real or unreal. So they say, right? But I'm going to go with that because I've done it myself and it works. Is that leader going to encourage that person? Because this is non-traditional, right? This is non-traditional. Okay, your break time, you're free. They might see one person out there doing that laughing yoga, and it starts with maybe just a chuckle. And the more if you try it, Manya, the more you laugh. I get myself, when you have friends and, the tears running down because you're laughing so hard.
Yes.
You can do that. And it's become a part of the fabric of that organization. So someone doesn't come in and just take everything away.
Right. What do you think we're missing in leadership training and in how we're bringing people up through the organization when it comes to preparing people to lead with compassion?
What we're missing, literally, is communication, effective communication and compassion. Those two hand in hand. And how do you communicate? Some of the ways that I say to you, you bring it up through the organization is based on having you have a simple place, which is your open door policy, which creates safety. Trust is very important, extremely important to have the trust to know that you're going to be that compassionate leader. You're going to feel free and you're going to lead by example. Really, you have to lead by example. And that's what your question before. I'm leading by example by coming in there and saying, okay, I took over a company, just divert just slightly, took over a company many years ago. This was a wellness company that I was building. And the first thing I did, and I remember when I walked in, they were removing one leader out of the main post and was putting me in as the head of the organization, which was not, I got bombarded with a lot of stuff. But anyway, the first thing I did I didn't care how long it took me before I wrote a procedure manual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Policy and procedure manual. I sat down. That was my first order, even though they brought me on initially as a consultant to bring the company up financially, to take it out of it's going this way, and to bring, even though I said, I'm not going to do, if I don't sit down and if everyone does not have something to go by, we're never going to be successful. So I lock myself in an office and I start off with, and simple things. There were simple things I said to the trainers. The boardroom is not your closet. Take your gym bags and your sweaty shirts out of that room. Created that room where when we go in there, this is what we do in that room.
Jasmine, we are getting close to the end of our time.
So fast.
And I know it goes by so quickly. What do you think is one step that a company and its leaders can take right now easily to just move the needle to becoming more compassionate?
Develop a wellness culture. Develop a wellness culture is number one. Takes many steps to get there, but if you can develop this wellness culture, and I've seen a company that's so good at it, you walk through that front door and you can feel it. You can feel the energy. Energy is something that is very contagious. So if they develop, the one thing right away is develop. Don't worry about the steps to get there. Worry about putting it down and says, this is what I'm going to do for my team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that's excellent. Commit to building that wellness culture. Don't worry about the steps immediately, but get yourself there. Jasmine, thank you so much. Before we go, can you please share with our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how they can learn about you and your business?
Oh, fantastic. I am a wellness leader and leadership coach. I create health and wellness programs in workplaces. When I say workplaces, don't take it for only workplace. It transcends to your home and the community. And what I do, I do speaking engagements. I have a book out, several books, but your audience will get a free copy of The Hidden Signs, How to Identify Emotional Burnout in the Workplace. And they can get that copy by going to on my website, jazzdhealth.com, and it's JAZZD health.com. And they fill out that little thing that says, give me my free copy from, Notes of Resilience, and they'll get that copy. They can also reach me on LinkedIn. And I also have a series of Develop a Learning Hub on YouTube, where there are probably about 20 odd videos on it as we speak. And just different emotional intelligence in the workplace, because in order to get anything done, you must have a little bit of emotional intelligence in order to see what's going on around and be able to act. And so they can reach me on LinkedIn. They can reach me on my website. They can Jasmine Health, just one word, on YouTube, and they can click through the videos to see what resonates with them.
I will put links to that in the show notes to make it easier for folks to find you. Jasmine, thank you so much. It's been lovely chatting with you today.
It's been so great, and time flies.
It does. It absolutely does. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm Manya Chilinsky. I help organizations build compassionate, resilient teams that thrive by creating environments where well-being is at the core. Often people reach out to me during times of crisis or significant change, but the truth is that building a healthier, more supportive workplace can prevent issues before they arise and empower your teams to thrive no matter what challenges come their way. If you're ready to make a meaningful change, I'd love to connect. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple Podcast or your listening platform of choice. It really helps others find us. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.